Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Decision Hour. I'm your host, Adam Bird, and I have a very special episode lined up for you today. This is one that I've been wanting to do for a couple of months now. I got two very special guests with me today. They are part of the HMG family network of podcasts that we have. They do a show called Environmentally Speaking. It is, how do I put this? You would think it's like you think environmentally, anything environmental. The first thing as a military guy, you're like, Earth Crunchy, this is going to be one of those tree hugger type shows. I was wrong. Like this is like one of those shows where like every week I look forward to like, all right, when are they getting me this episode? Because I'm fortunate enough that I get to do the back end work and do the production or oversee the production on this show. And they blow me away every week with the topics that they talk about. And they're more focused. They're up in Rhode Island. I'm going to bring them on here in just a second. But the topics that they talk about, you really can incorporate it anywhere, quite frankly. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Clarice and Marisa Destel of Environmentally Speaking. Ladies, welcome to the show.
Hey, Adam.
Awesome. Well, listen, Clarice, let's start with you. Give the listeners a little bit, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. And more importantly, thanks for producing our episodes, because I can say for both of us, we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, you do. Give yourself credit.
So yeah, I'm Clarice. Marisa and I used to work together at her environmental law firm. And she came into my office one day and said, we're doing a podcast. And I had so much fun doing it with her. We're still doing it today, even though I'm not at the firm anymore. So it's been exciting. It's fun. And it's a good thing to chat about once a week.
That it most certainly is. And Marisa, let's bring you on.
So my mind is a wagon wheel right now. I have like a joke that I want to make, but I'm going to hold on to it because I think what Clarice just said is probably more appropriate. That I went to her office and said, we're doing a podcast because that's what my PR people told me to do. Yep. As far as I'm concerned, if you've got experts in your corner, you should rely on them. And that's what Adam is. He's the back end production guy. He makes us look and sound decent, based on what we send him. That's a miracle.
This isn't about me, ladies. Listen, if you guys are listening to this show, we're going to quickly turn this back around on them. If you guys are listening to this podcast, it means you're already online. Go to heroesmediagroup.com. You can check out and look up Environmentally Speaking. You can find them there, Apple, any place that you like listening to your podcasts. Environmentally Speaking, you'll be happy that you did. Kind of going off of what Marisa said, like her PR people told her she needed to do a show, but in all actuality, when you guys put this stuff together, how do you determine what? Well, let's back up a second. Why the podcast? And other than somebody told you to do it, why the podcast? And now that you guys have just over a year of episodes in, what has been some of you? I mean, obviously you guys are doing this. This is a weekly podcast, yes?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. And is this something? You seem like when I listen to the show that this is something that you guys enjoy doing and talking about. The shows aren't very long; they're about 15 to 20, 25 minutes long. And the topics how do you determine what topics you're going to talk about? Let's start there.
Oh, that's kind of fun. Typically, and to be super candid with you and your audience, we're deciding the topics the night before,
morning of.
If it's morning of, if it's really exciting, 2 days before. That's how you know we're passionate about it. We thought and picked it ahead of time. But it's usually either what's the theme in the office this week,
okay,
like what's something that's been going on over and over again, or what's interesting in the news. Did I read something? Did Marisa read something? Has something popped up that we want to talk more about?
It's a good partnership because I'm pretty dark and cynical, and in my experience practicing as a pro environmental attorney, all I do is lose lose no matter what. So I tend to go down a negative rabbit hole, and Clarice will reel me in with a suggestion about an episode that is a little more lighthearted or has a positive ending to it. That partnership evolved over the past year.
Yeah.
At first, we were pretty, I don't want to say stiff because that's not our personality, but the topics we were picking were things that were coming up in the office, and they can be dry. The Administrative Procedures Act, the Open Meetings Act, these are areas of administrative law that nobody is interested in. So we would do a couple of episodes like that, and then started figuring out that there are more global topics that people are interested in hearing about. And renewable energy, I think, is our most popular at this point.
I think that's such. I'm glad since you brought that up. Let's. That's a good transition. Let's talk about renewable. For the listeners out there that aren't sure what classifies as renewable energy, give us the definition.
Renewable energy is meant to be any type of energy that does not result in contaminants or emissions or pollutants of concern into our atmosphere.
So like fossil fuels, oil, stuff like that.
That would not be renewable energy.
Okay. So then you're talking wind, solar.
Correct.
So wind and solar, because you've done those topics a couple of different times or have elaborated. You've had a couple of episodes on those. The solar one is what really got to me. And now the solar one really got to me. My background, I did consulting for a solar company in Arizona another lifetime. It was like 20 years ago. And this was right when solar was just starting to get hip and trying to figure out, hey, let's do this. And they were trying to create these solar farms out on these military bases, like in the desert,
yep.
Excuse me, and whatnot. And now, fast forward 20 years, you're hearing more about solar and all of. I like the idea of solar. I think it's good, but solar panels have a
useful life.
Yeah, an expiration date on them, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And you guys really went into detail on that episode of like, it's just cheaper to get rid of them as opposed to recycling a lot of the material that you can do. And that was the one thing that I was just completely amazed by, because you guys really dig into a lot of these topics like the solar ones. And Marisa, you said this, and this was just totally blew my mind. You said in one of your episodes, just because it says it's environmentally friendly doesn't mean that it is.
Yes.
Huge amount of respect for you on that one, because I think a lot of people think I look at as I'm looking out my office window, there's one of those big wind turbines, and I'll get into that here in a second, but it's and there's our neighbor's got solar. I like the idea of it, but what do you do with it afterwards? Do you think there's a you would think with all of the technology that we have, I mean, everybody carries around these, pocket computers, as I like to call them, that we couldn't figure out a better way to recycle these things after they're doomed. Because what happens with those solar panels and stuff once they're expired? Anybody?
Typically what happens is a lot of times if you're, say, specifically using the example of like your neighbor's solar panels.
Yeah.
They bought these panels through a company. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you would call that company again towards the end of the panel's life and say, hey, we need to look at replacement, removal, however next steps are. And then at the end of it, it's just like when you take your trash out. You put your trash at the end of your driveway. Somebody else comes and collects it, and that's it. You're not thinking about it anymore.
Should we?
We should be. We should be thinking about it, because we only have so much space.
Right.
I mean, if you filled your office with everything that was your favorite thing, you're not going to have enough room to walk to your computer and walk to your desk. We only have X amount of space, so we should be thinking about it. But I think it was a situation where we were so excited to tap into this and to create this product. And we were so focused on getting there, we didn't think about what happened afterwards.
Right.
It's like astronaut syndrome. We got to get to the moon.
Yeah.
And once we stood on the moon, we're like, oh, what do we do now?
Right. Take the solar panels there. I don't know. One of the other episodes I really liked that you guys are facing up there just off the shore was the wind farms that were being discussed, the offshore wind farms. Another episode that I absolutely got a lot out of, because traveling southwestern part of the United States, you see a lot of these wind farms from Arizona to California, through the panhandle of Texas and whatnot. And I got to thinking about, man, what do you do with those when they? I mean, Iowa's huge. Iowa's got a ton of them, and when they get struck by lightning, they catch on fire or whatnot. You're like, what are you supposed to do with these extra parts? And there's a place in Texas where they just sit them there, and it's like a dumping ground for these big arms. Like, so I forget what I was going to ask you, but the point is, I absolutely love what you guys are doing, because I think you're bringing so much education. And even though you guys are up in the northeastern part of Rhode Island, Massachusetts area, I really think the topics that you guys talk about, anybody can take those topics and incorporate them in their local areas. Another one that you guys talked about was I don't remember the title of the show, but you talked about the California and the animals with the
that little animal crossing over
like
the highway.
Land bridge kind of a thing for the animals and stuff. Like,
that was one of those positive ones. That was Clarice's idea, because I just negative. And Adam, before, if you're inclined to move on, I just want to throw something out here that you indicated you worked for a solar company in Arizona, and then you referenced your military history and said that the former military bases or even active bases are being used for solar farms.
Yeah.
And that is a really important fact that I would like to provide a little more background on. A lot of people don't know that there is a completely different set of rules and procedures that applies to federal land, federal government land that is then leased to a private party versus private land and state-owned land. The military base example is a good one, because when the federal government decides that it wants to use its property in a particular way, it does not follow the same set of rules and regulations that you might be familiar with at the state level. Okay. The federal government, basically, in my experience, gives you the high hard one and tells you what they're going to do without a whole lot of oversight, because who's overseeing it?
Right.
And again, in my experience, the federal government process for these types of projects, renewable energy included, are to hurry up and get them in, because there's a requisition and a purchase order that has to be fulfilled before someone can go home for the day or the year. And there is no planning past, frankly, the day.
Right.
So they're not looking at 2050 or the year 3000 to figure out what to do.
What can happen now? Let's get it in place, and we'll worry about it when that time comes. Or we won't worry about it. Whoever's involved with the project or overseeing that, when that time comes, they can worry about it then. And this is where I'll get a little negative. Is I think it's become somebody's lining somebody else's pockets when it comes down to it.
No,
I know. Shocker.
Stop.
Shocker. I know. I said what I said.
I can't believe this.
Listen, it's you don't have to believe me, but it doesn't mean it's not the truth. I'm just saying, like,
it's money.
It
money
was one of those
and cash
things,
is king, and that's it.
When I was involved with it, my job was the military liaison because of my background, and it was, I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions, billions of dollars to put these solar farms up in and around these military bases. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago, I'd been off that project for a long time, but I was down in Tucson, Arizona, down at the Air Force Base down there, and they'd gotten rid of the playground for the kids on base housing, and they put solar panels all around. I mean, it's everywhere around the housing. That's on all the houses. It's, you know, the old runway is filled with solar panels now. It's I get it. And then I'm sitting there looking. My first reaction was, man, that's a lot of money I could have had. That's selfish me. Listen, I am man enough to admit that was a selfish me. But then I also look at it like, you know, it was a big political kind of thing, like a who's who. Like if you're going to run for a political office or something like that, because let's face it, like when you're talking anything that has to do with the environment to this extent, somebody's saying something up above and is getting a kickback from it. That's my opinion.
Well, look at our most recent episode. We talked about how there were folks in the oil industry putting out advertisements and speaking against the wind farms as not environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
And while the messages were, you know,
accurate.
something that we could, something that we would consider accurate and stand by, the oil company is not caring about the environment. They're doing this to prevent losing money.
Has the environment topic as a whole, has it gotten too politicized?
What do you mean?
Meaning that it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you sit on. People are going to say what they want to what they think people want to hear, so they can get paid for a project that their buddy or their nephew or whoever is funding a project to protect X, Y, and Z. Take the wind farms, for example. Are the wind farms a good idea to have right off the coast where the electric is running under because it's shifting the
Benthic habitat.
Yeah, all the habitat and stuff like that. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't. You know, I understand there maybe the logical reason of having it out in the water, but then it disrupts the fishing. It disrupts everything. It disrupts the local community, in my opinion. And you guys kind of covered that. Again, those of you that are listening, you can go to Environmentally Speaking podcast on Apple, Google, and all your favorite places. Make sure you check that episode out. But then it's like, where does that tie in? How do you make it to where it's friendly for everybody? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's not possible. So when I decided that I wanted to study environmental science, I decided to go to a school in Vermont called Lyndon State College, and it was one of the premier environmental science schools in the United States. And on my first day of my first class in my first year, I had a Russian professor, very interesting fellow, who said, "Welcome to my class. This is Environmental Studies 101. Overpopulation is the root of every single problem on this planet. And you will never hear that spoken by a politician because it is political suicide." And I have never forgotten it. Obviously, I'm 45 years old and I remember it verbatim. Climate change, overpopulation, weather effects, that impacts that we're seeing are all driven by politics to a certain extent. So my short answer to your question previously, is are environmental issues being politicized? My answer is yes. But I don't think that 100% of the reason for politics coming into play are just somebody's nephew getting a kickback or this politician needs a vote. It's also that nobody wants to deal with the reality that we are screwed. as a species. It is scary. It is panic inducing. I have minor panic attacks and existential crises almost every day about it. And I don't have kids. I can't imagine what it's like to be an adult or any age with children and to have to think about what we're leaving behind for those kids. I've dedicated my entire life to trying to make the planet a better place and to preserve and conserve. And even talking about it right now, my heart starts to beat a little faster because I know I'm losing. And that, I think, is the other half of environmentalism in this country.
So I'm glad you bring that up. Let me ask you this, both of you ladies. If there's something that we could do right now for the listeners that are listening, what's one thing that they could do? And it could be anything, whether it's, make sure that you don't put your plastic bag and your recyclables in a plastic bag.
I mean, who would do that?
I don't know.
A monster.
That's low, Adam.
Only a monster.
That's not fair.
I only bring that up because somebody in this house did that recently, and it wasn't me. So I resorted for that person to go listen to that episode so they could understand that that's not something you do. So
I'll learn from my mistakes.
I would say get educated.
Okay.
Don't be lazy. Don't just go on your phone and look at headlines. I mean, really read about what is going on our planet. You can still use your phone to do it, but actually find a peer-reviewed source and start looking at even just the abstract for these materials. You don't have to read the 60-page document, but the abstract. Go and read the abstract for the Paris Accord. Go and I know that sounds really dry and lame, but I'm serious. Really educate yourself. And you'll understand it. It's not so, these materials are not so technical that you can't understand them.
That makes sense. I love the show because of the topics that you guys talk about. And I'm going to just name a few of them for my listeners right now. Like historic flooding, that was an interesting one. Offshore wind was a big one. Navajo Nation's water rights, that one hit a little too close to home for me because I used to work in Tuba City up on the Navajo reservation and stuff like that. So that one there,
that's a tough one.
And I've made several phone calls after that, and I'm in talks with people that are currently working on that project and tribal council and stuff like that. So that one was a really good one. The endangered right whale. That one took me by surprise because it wasn't something that you would think, but you guys kind of, the way you had talked about it so elegantly was just like, wow, that's a big issue. And for somebody that, I'm down in Pennsylvania, I'm not on the shore, so the right whale side of it isn't the thing, but whether you agree with this or not, I hunt, I fish, but we're also big conservationists. So like if we hunt or fish, what are we doing to give back to the earth? And in doing so, like we plant about 22 to 3 dozen trees a year on our family properties and stuff. So if we log, we do logging every 10 to 15 years. You have to log certain parts of it so new stuff can come in and grow, and it helps with the habitat and the animals and stuff like that. Like we're very conscious of what we're doing. We get involved with the local DNRs and whatnot for fish hatcheries and stuff like that. What are they doing to protect the fish populations? What are they doing to protect the waters? All of this other stuff. So a lot of it is, I think maybe that's why I resonate so much with your guys' show because it's oil industry. I brought up the solar panel one, wetlands. That, oh my God, that wetlands episode that you guys were talking about. All great topics, and I think these are all things that I think people let me put it to you guys like this. If you're listening to the show today, this environmentally speaking, what these ladies talk about are topics that you can incorporate in and around your area. Now, you hear environment and, well, where do you really start? Start here. Start listening to their podcast. That use their podcast as a starting point. That's why they're doing it. It's a very educational, funny, entertaining, great place to start. Because there's a lot of things that I've done, a lot of stuff that I thought I knew, and then I started getting involved with their show. I was like, shit, I don't know a damn thing. And there was so many things that were eye-opening that made me look at things from both sides of the aisle. I have a ton of respect for you ladies for doing this, because the topics that you talk about are very... I can hear in your voices, and although I get the behind-the-scenes action of your guys' show, so not everybody gets that, but I can hear it in your voices and stuff. I've been doing this long enough to, it's like, okay, this is really, you guys put a very heartfelt into your episodes and whatnot, and I want to thank you ladies for doing that, because I appreciate what you guys do, seriously.
Thanks, Adam.
Absolutely.
You.
I think
awfully nice.
Yeah, no, and I'm not just saying that. I really think what you guys are doing is great. And I'm scrolling through some of the old wetlands, gray water, stormwater was another one. I was like, oh, that was kind of nasty, but okay. It was. We're gonna name this one "Stormwater Discharges."
It's why I don't wear flip-flops when it rains.
Oh,
it's just weird.
Yes.
Disgusting.
Gross and yes. But, going back to what Marisa said, it's when she was talking about the, is environmental topics over politicized? In learning more, I guess the whole goal of this podcast is to give our listeners just a bite-sized version of a topic, an approachable introduction to what's going on. In no way is each episode the full knowledge or like totally encompassing. You can't listen to an episode and leave an expert, but it's meant just to give you something to think about and say, oh, I kind of want to learn more about this, or I never thought of this, and just sort of get your feet wet. It's very overwhelming. So this is
it can
gateway
be,
to it.
But I love the fact that you really kind of take a bite-sized chunk out of it and make it consumable for somebody, especially those that are just starting to get into these topics and the environment and whatnot. And you make it easy, and you do a good job, because a lot of the times you guys will reference in the show, like, this is the article that we found this from or whatnot, and you're talking about that. So I think that part of it's great. Let me ask you this. If today you had a topic that you wanted to talk about, or maybe it's a topic you haven't talked about, we're going to hear in a future episode, but what would be the topic what would be the topic today if you had to pick one?
I've thought of one instantly.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I would love to do an episode on nuclear energy, but I haven't gotten into it because that's a lot of research that I'm not yet there yet. There's a lot of reading that's still just going right over my head. I think I need like a couple of YouTube videos. I need somebody to make an illustration for me. It's a very big topic. So I would love to do that, but I need to do more of my own reading before I can pretend to say it back.
And an interesting subset of that issue is, for me, I find fascinating, in the 70s, nuclear power was supposed to be the cleanest form of energy. Yeah. And what happened? Our species got a hold of it and we fucked it all up. But I think that is interesting.
It's funny you say that, because we talk nuclear. I live about 15 miles from 3 Mile Island, which in the 80s
that's a mess.
Had the big mess.
Yeah.
And it's like, so the Susquehanna River is where 3 Mile Island is, and we live downstream from that. So it's like, again, I mentioned I love the fish. I won't keep the fish. I don't eat the fish.
The fish have antlers.
And when
I was gonna say, how many eyes?
I've only had one cycloptic fish come out with 5 fins, but that's, whatever. It hasn't been that bad. No,
It was an efficient fish.
It was interesting. No, it's not that bad anymore, but it's not something where I'm going to keep the fish here. I don't. I do catch and release, and that's, just how I fish most of the time, especially in a river that is downstream from a major accident, whether it was 30, 40 years ago or not, doesn't matter. It's still in the back of my head.
Yep.
But I think that's a great topic, nuclear energy. That'd be a good one. Ladies.
Coming soon.
We're coming up on time here, but I want to ask you both a question that I ask all my guests. Marisa, we're going to start with you this time. Name a time in your life where your feet were on the line and you had to make that decision. What was it, and what was the atmosphere like?
There was a time after I graduated law school, and I was not practicing environmental law. I couldn't get a job. It was Enron period in time frame. And the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management was hiring. So I said, well, to hell with it. I'll apply. I'm not political. I don't know anybody. Rhode Island can be a very political state. So I put my package of materials together, the application, the resume, in the manila envelope. And as I went to drop it in the mailbox in downtown Providence, I realized as I let it go that I hadn't put a return address on it. And none of the application materials included anything other than my current work address. I didn't really want the current work address to know that I had applied for another job. And I said, to hell with it. It's up to the universe now. Whatever happens as a result of me making this major error, I'm just gonna go for it. And it worked out. I got the job. And thank God I got the job, because that was the launching pad for the rest of my career and trying to be pro-environmental.
That's awesome. Clarice, same question goes to you. Name a time in your life, your feet are on the line. You have to make that decision. What is it, and what's the atmosphere like for you?
Oh, Marissa's was way more inspirational. I had, let me see. The first thing that came to mind was I had just found out that I did not pass the bar, which is an expensive rejection. If anybody has gone to law school or taken the bar. And I was trying to figure out, what do I do? Do I try again, or do I see what else there is? I need to figure out some next step. And I had failed the bar. I had just lost a job, and I was waitressing at night. And I said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work every single night, and I'm going to put myself through mediation training. And if I can't find a job or an opportunity, or this path isn't working, screw it, I'm going to make one. So I took a mediation training, and then I volunteered, and I spent all of my nights at a restaurant, and I spent all of my days reaching out to parties, offering free mediations through a court program. So that way I could get experience. And then I went back to the trainer and I said, this is how many cases I've convened. What else can I do? What else can I help with? And it wasn't necessarily I was feet on the line. I need to make a call, yes or no. It was an absence. There was nothing happening. So I had to make my opportunity. And I'm really thankful I did that. I was like, if it's not happening, if it's not out there, I'm going to go find it. I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to go do that thing.
Nice. That's awesome. Thank you, ladies. Now, where can the listeners find you if they have questions about the environment, or they want to reach out to you, or they want to see the videos? You guys have a YouTube channel as well. I didn't bring that up because I'm a horrible host, but you guys have a YouTube channel as well. You can watch the videos and whatnot. where can they reach you, whether it's social media, website, questions? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Clarice.
As our producer, I feel like you're setting me up again. Dear listeners, I am going to try my best to get this right. Every week, I need to let you all know where you can find us, and I don't do it right. So if you are interested in learning more about environmentally speaking, if you want to hear Marissa's words of wisdom and negativity, if you want to hear me just be the color and confusion, you can reach out to us at help@decitelesq.com. You can find us on all social medias, including YouTube, at Decetel Law. And I nailed it.
Well, I'll cut this out and we'll add this to the end of all the episodes moving forward then, Clarice. How's that?
Oh, that'll be good. Yeah.
Please.
Ladies, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for taking time with me and the listeners today.
Thank you.
Oh, thank
This
you.
was fun.
Folks, that's all the time that we got. Make sure you go check out Environmentally Speaking. Rewind it. You can find them on social media, all their parts there. You can also find them on Heroes Media Group. Simply go to heroesmediagroup.com. That's all the time I got. Until next time, you've been listening to The Decision Hour.